Snidely Whiplash.
There's like a Milwaukee Brewers player who had a ridiculous mustache. There you go. I get that guy sometimes.
Yeah, that was like me and my brother were kids. 82.
I think that I look like the villain in one of the original Star Treks. You know, like you could tell the villains because they had facial hair like JP or me. They're like, oh, that guy can't be trusted. He's got a beard or a facial hair that would not be acceptable by Starfleet.
Harry Mudd, right?
Harry Mudd?
Harry Mudd, there you go.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that one.
He had like the androids.
Oh, all right, cool.
And he's the one who got the Enterprise infested with tribbles.
Oh, yep. That sounds like my kind of thing that I would get to, because tribbles are fun. All right, so today we have a request to draw a clip. So we got a project where somebody wants to clip something onto their finger. However, you can make clips for all sorts of weird things. A clip will include a joint. So joints are fun. We'll use as-built joints to make this clip. We will also do my favorite thing that Fusion 360 does, is it makes me buy stuff from mcMaster Carr. So I can insert a mcMaster Carr component and it just pulls right from mcMaster Carr. So we're going to find a spring on mcMaster Carr.
That's handy.
And yeah, mcMaster Carr sells me a lot of stuff because they put it right in Fusion 360. It's great.
Could you steal one of your mom's clothespins?
You could, but that would be less fun. And your mom's clothespins are only a certain size and shape. So if you want to make a custom clip for chips, or you want to clip something onto your finger to read biometric data, for example, you can do so with a custom design clip. So I am going to start by creating a sketch. And actually, I lied. I didn't lie. Let's create a sketch first. So I'm going to click on Create.
Should we change our units first?
Oh, if you want to. If it's your first time logging into Fusion here, you could spin down your document settings option, and you can hover over units. We tend to draw in freedom units in this class. If you want, you can set it as a default, so you don't have to change it again. But if you like changing it back and forth, you can draw in whatever units you want to. Except I will be calling out inches in this class, or freedom units as we call them. And let's start by creating a sketch. So I think everybody in here is pretty familiar. So we'll click on Create, and then I'll come down to Create Sketch here. I am going to imagine this clip from the side. So I'm just going to draw basically the side of this clip. So I'm going to draw on the right plane, I think. It doesn't really matter a whole lot which of these initial planes you choose, but I'm going to draw on the right plane, which is, for me, the one between my blue and my green axis, my Z and my Y axis there. Now, a good clip needs a place to rotate. So I am going to start by drawing a circle right at my origin. So I'm going to draw a center diameter circle. As a rule of thumb, I like to have some point. I gotta stop saying that because that's not an appropriate thing to say anymore. I apologize. As just a rule. Just a rule, a guideline, if you will. We put something at our origin because it's good parametrically to have things constrained in space as well as in dimension. So by connecting something to my origin, I constrain it in space, and now I will constrain it in size. I happen to have some 5mm rod at home, and I think I'm going to imagine the center of this being 5mm. our little shaft.
Say that for freedom units.
I know, but the metric system is still a wonderful thing. And you can also illustrate here. I can just type in millimeters if I want to. And let's say I bought something that the rest of the world also likes to use. You can just specify millimeters here. And when you hit enter, it just does the conversion, which is a wonderful thing. And I can double click on it. And even though it was showing me inches, when I double click on it, it says, oh, you typed in 5 millimeters here. Cool. All right, so if the shaft is 5 millimeters, let's draw another circle around the outside of that shaft. So I'm going to click on circle and then center diameter circle again here. And I'm going to make another circle concentric on that first circle. I'm going to make this 1/2 inch. So 0.5. Grab my calipers here, because I'm probably going to start using them a little bit. And I'm going to hit enter. I like to take these measurements, and especially for small little circles like this, I like to click and drag on them and pull them outside of my circle, just so I can see them. If they're inside your circle, you can still see them if you're zoomed way in. The numbers always kind of stay the same size, regardless of how far you are away from them. They don't get bigger, but it's nice to be able to see your measurements in case you want to reference them later. All right, so now let's start making one side of our clip here. So I am going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to click on rectangle, and then I'm going to click on 2-point rectangle here. And I'm going to draw my rectangle purposefully off in a bad place so we can see, so we can demonstrate something later here. So let's make my rectangle 2 inches by 1/8 of an inch. So 0.125, or back into the let's just take a walk around and see how you guys are doing. Got a couple of circles, kind of a rectangle. The goal for those of you who want to try to work ahead a little bit is to get the center of our rectangle directly over the center of our circle. Yeah. So if you want to.
So I forgot. I somehow.
You don't have your measurements.
Yeah. I got ahead of myself somehow.
That's
I don't
all
know how I
right.
did it, but I did.
This is a wonderful thing. So, if, for example, if we happen to place our rectangle before we typed in the measurements for a rectangle, we can add those measurements after the fact. And you can find that tool in the Create menu at the very bottom. It's also the D key on the keyboard. So if you hit D, it'll pull up the Sketch Dimension tool. And now I can click on a line, and I can give it, and I can place the dimension that it thinks that line is. So right now that line is 2.068666996 inches. It's a round number. I can just type in 2 and hit enter, and it will dimension that line there. I could also say, hey, I don't want to dimension this line. I could say, hey, the distance between this line and this line is going to be some dimension. So 0.125. Or you could also type in 1/8 if your units are inches. And it will make that line. Now, cool? Dimensioned?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so if we wanted to make the center of this rectangle directly over the center of our circle, we can do so with the help of two things. So we will need to first draw a point. So from the Create menu, there is a, oh, bless you, there is an option called Point here. Now, if we hover over the middle of our line here, you can see I get to an area when I get near the middle that it turns into I get a little blue triangle. That blue triangle is telling me that it's going to automatically add a special constraint. And that is a midpoint constraint here. So it's going to say, hey, that point, when I place it, here's an endpoint constraint. This little box.
Step, I'm not getting the triangle.
You're not getting the triangle?
No.
Click on Create, and then Point.
That's what I missed.
And then you can hover. There we go. Now you got the triangle. So if we place that point right at the midpoint of that line, now we've got a little icon that's appeared here. That is a constraint icon. In fact, if you look closely, there are constraint icons all over our drawing that has kind of automatically been added to the drawing as we draw them. So these constraints here are the horizontal vertical constraint. So these lines can only be directly horizontal or directly vertical. Here's a little midpoint constraint right there. All of those constraints can be added using the constraint menu.
Okay, I'm sorry. I seem to be lost at the moment.
That's all right. How are we doing?
I was trying to create a point.
I think you've made a new sketch.
Okay.
So I can tell you made a new sketch because things kind of look kind of grayed out.
Yeah.
They don't look. So I
actually, I think I got too many sketches here.
Yeah, you got a couple. So if you click Finish, and then you can spin down your little sketches folder there, and you can hide by using the little eyeball
Or I
icon.
can delete these.
Well, assuming you know which one to delete.
I assume this is the first one, and this would be the second.
I assume, but if you hit the little eyeball icon, and nothing goes away, then you know, like, oh, yep, sketch one is where you got all your stuff. So now you can be sure that when you delete the right sketch, you're deleting. Now if you right click on that sketch and you say Edit Sketch, which is like, yeah, there you go. Now you're back to the point. Yeah.
All right.
And then when you hover over that midpoint there you go. So like I said, there are constraint icons all over. We can add them as well. This is where one of those occasions where I encourage people to use the practice of you pick your tool and then you choose what you're going to use that tool on. So right now I've got a line selected. If I go and grab one of these constraint options and say like, oh, parallel or horizontal vertical, I've already got something selected, so it's just going to add that constraint to the thing I have selected. So I encourage people to make sure they don't have anything selected. So if I had that line selected, I would just click off into emptiness. So I don't have anything selected. So now I can pick my tool first. And the tool I'm going to choose is my horizontal vertical constraint. And I can choose the point that I made at the midpoint of that line and the center of my circles. And now it will line those two things up so they're directly vertical of each other. Neat? Neat. All right, cool. So now we've got one problem solved. Our rectangle is lined up. The next problem we need to solve is it's not the right distance from the center from my circle here. So I can fix that problem by giving it a dimension. So in addition to like giving like a line a dimension or giving a circle a dimension, I can define a dimension between two items. So like we added that sketch dimension to that rectangle we forgot to add dimensions to. If I choose the sketch dimension option from my create menu here, and again, I don't have anything selected, so I'll choose that sketch dimension option. I will pick that point that I just made, and I will pick again the center of my circle here. And now if I move my mouse over here, you can see it's giving me a dimension to place. That is the current dimension between those two objects. So I can place this anywhere. And now I can enter in a number that I'd like that dimension to be. Like 3/8. Nope. Smaller than that. Like from the center. Gosh, my center circle was
Half for the big one and
was 5 millimeters.
Do you want the center of the rectangle, not the line, to be over the center of the circle?
I don't. No, I want it to be like probably just outside of my shaft diameter, which was 5 millimeters.
this is 200,000.
So if I say 3 millimeters,
Okay.
I actually probably want it to be a little bit further in that way, but we'll cross that bridge later. So I went with 3 millimeters. I think that's going to end up being too close. Like eventually we need a spring to fit around this, a leaf spring to fit around this, and our leaf spring is probably going to have a diameter that needs more than 0.5 millimeter on either side of it, but we'll worry about that in later. Because once you have the dimension placed, you can always change it. And the key thing that I want to point out about our sketch right now is our sketch is now fully constrained. This is a wonderful thing. All of my lines are black. So before, if I do Command Z a couple of times here, like my circles are fully constrained. They're locked in position in space, and they're locked in position in size. But my rectangle is not fully constrained. So I can click on my rectangle and click and drag on it, and I can move it up and down. It won't let me move it left or right because I've got a constraint that says, hey, these 2 points are always right above each other. But now once I give it a dimension, now my sketch is fully constrained.
I was wondering why sometimes some things are blue and others are black.
Yes.
And that's why, okay.
And I like to get to this point where things are fully constrained because, especially for occasions when I'm definitely going to change some of these measurements, because I never draw something right the first time I draw it, ever. You have to be Mike in order to do that, and none of us here are Mike, except for Mike. So when I have all these, my sketches all black, it's really easy to predict in what ways it's going to move around when I change my dimensions. So if I change this to 1 inch, I can really easily predict what's going to happen there because this line is not going to move anywhere. It's just going to be that line that moves, right? All right, cool. So we have half of our clip drawn. Now, how do we want to draw the other half of our clip? And do we want to do it now or do we want to do it later? Let's do it now. So, in order to draw the other half of my clip, I want to do it the lazy way. I want to do it the way that because I've already drawn a half a clip. Why should I have to draw another half of clip when I've already drawn one? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mirror tool here to create the other rectangle on the other side of this clip here. in order to use that mirror tool, I need a line to mirror my objects over. So if from the Create menu we grab our line tool, and we start a line at the center point of both of our circles, and I just draw a line out. Something I just want to be conscious of is I'm making a 0-degree line here. I want our line to be straight this direction. Doesn't really matter how long our line is. I'm just going to give it a dimension of 1 inch. And then I'm going to hit enter. Now, have we ever talked about line types? Does anybody remember me talking about line types? Yeah, well, also, center, you can also have a center line. So actually, it doesn't really illustrate it right here. If I select this line that I just made here, you can see in my sketch palette, there are a couple options here. So I have a regular line right now. I can make this a construction line, which is a dashed line. I'm going to make this, the option right next to that is a mirror line. Doesn't really matter.
Center line?
I'm sorry, center line. Good call. I'm going to make it a center line. You definitely do not need to make something a center line in order to mirror something over it, but it'll save you a click later if you make it a mirror line. Now I guess we had to click to make it a center line, so it's not really saving us a click, but look, your drawing will look cool because it'll have like dashed lines that are some are short and some are long, and you can impress all of your friends with your lines. All right, so now that I've got a line, I'm going to make sure that everybody else has a nice center line that we can mirror our shape across. Sweet center line, bruh. Cool. How you doing?
I got lost, but I'm okay.
That's all right.
Just watching.
We can take a step back here. Do you want me to help you out?
Well, I was distracted when you were moving to the center line area. So.
I don't mind taking a pause here. If you right click on that where it says sketch 1, then you can say edit that sketch. Okay. And the step that we're missing here is we need to align that midpoint over our center point here. Okay. And we did that with the horizontal vertical constraint. So if we click on the constraints menu, the word constraints. Okay. And then you can choose horizontal vertical. And now if you pick the center of your circle and that point, and then you'll pick that midpoint that you drew, you'll see it line up right over it. And then we added, if you click on the Create menu, the Sketch Dimension option. And now we'll dimension that center point from that midpoint, and we'll come back to you. How you guys doing? Cool. Cool.
For some operations, you can open up the origin and select an axis. Like if you do it like a rotate or something, that doesn't work with mirror though.
Oh, really?
It won't let me select the x-axis.
Really? It won't let you click on it at all?
Well, I can click on it all I want, it won't select it. So if you were to do mirror, select your rectangle.
Oh, see, for me, it's already got it selected.
Well, that's your center line.
Yeah.
Yeah, hit the X next to it. Remove it. All right, so now we want to select the mirror line. If you go to origin over on the left, so you're selecting the line that you drew. For some operations,
oh, right. You can click on the
line,
actual
you
axis.
can use the axis.
Right.
And this operation doesn't let you.
Yeah. Because your sketch, yeah, that's a fine point. Like, I should be able to just click on that red line
I'm gonna write
that it shows me there.
Letter to Autodesk.
Yeah, I will sign that letter at the bottom. Yeah, and now, so yeah, you're good there. There you go. Perfect. All right, cool. All right, so now I'm going to look at this more straight on. Now we can actually do the job of mirroring. So again, I've got nothing selected right off the bat. And I can, from the Create menu, I can come down and grab my mirror tool. Shift M, for those of you who had not changed the defaults. Do you guys think I should be calling out keyboard shortcuts more often?
Yes.
Yes? All right on. Shift M. I'm trying to learn Blender right now, and I find it really frustrating that
It's a learning curve.
everybody online just expects you to remember the 50 keyboard shortcuts that you need in order to make something. When I'm just like, show me what menu it's in so I can find the other things in that menu. But I will try to do both. That's a good tip.
The real good YouTubers have a plugin that anytime they hit
Yeah.
Shift Control left click arrow G, it shows it on the screen.
But they do it so fast, and
Yeah.
then I'm like pausing every second. I'm like, wait, Command 2? Is that what they did? Command 2 M? All right. So the objects that I want to mirror is going to be everything that makes up our rectangle there. And the line that I'm going to, the mirror line here is going to be that center line that I chose there. And it's kind of nice when I have a center line in my drawing, as soon as I use the mirror tool, it has automatically selected that center lines as my mirror line, which is kind of cool. So now all I have to do is go around and choose the 4 lines that are on either side of my nice rectangle that we made there.
Mine's not allowing me to select. It actually has object type as a choice to start with.
Yeah, now if you pick on your line bits there. So here, click cancel. So there are mirror tools in your sketching environment, and there are mirror tools outside of your sketching environment. So if somehow you like clicked enter too many times and you left your sketching environment, so all my tools at the top, you can see your 3D tools. If you left your sketching environment, you'll just have to right click on it and then say edit sketch. And now I'm back in my sketching environment. A clue is like the measurements go away when you're not in your sketching environment. And even though they call the tool the same thing, it works differently for sure. So now hopefully you can use a mirror tool, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so good questions. I like the questions. I don't want to feel like I'm up here talking to myself, so I appreciate you guys. All right. I talk to myself when I'm at home. I talk to myself like a crazy person at home. I don't need to talk to myself like a crazy person when I'm in public too.
Crazy when you get into arguments with yourself and lose.
Right, exactly, yes. That's what my life looks like. All right. So I'm going to click OK here now that I've made my mirror here. And now I am done making this sketch. So now that we have completed the entirety of this sketch, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Finish Sketch icon.
Is that 0.118 dimension that you had, is that important?
Maybe.
I kind of ended up with something else.
This, yeah, no, not super important. It's actually 3 millimeters. But like I said, I think it's going to need to be more than that. I just don't know how much more it's going to need to be right now.
Oh, okay.
And I won't know until I find my part from mcMaster Carr. All right, so now let's make some items 3-dimensional. Eventually, we want to put a joint in this object. And I'm going to do that later. I guess I'm just debating in my head. So when you make a joint, you need to have 2 components. And right now, we only have one component. We have our unsaved document main component over here. We're going to make components from our bodies. I've decided. Not that you guys know what that means, but it's okay. Let's start by extruding out some of the top half of our little creation here. So from the create menu here, I'm going to come and grab the extrude tool. What's that?
E.
E for extrude. Thank you. Yes. So I'm going to hit the E key for extrude. And I am going to choose, as the objects that I extrude, all of the parts of this circle. Is this going to work? Is that? Do I need my...
Would you want at least one of the rectangles to be a separate body so it can...
Maybe I'm not thinking about this right. We're going to choose all of it for now. And I reserve the right to go back in time and make a change later. And
you'll have to zoom in to get the top and bottom of the circle unless we're clipping those off at the end.
you do, but you don't really need them. I don't think we need the top and bottom of our circle.
Either, but just double checking.
Yeah.
And we're probably gonna change that dimension.
Correct. Yes.
Which would,
yeah, that would make an alterations there. So I'm going to extrude this.
How come not bottom?
Well, so we're going to extrude them separately.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to extrude it out. Let's just make it like 1/8 of an inch. That'll probably be fine, right? I'm extruding towards me 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to say, okay.
Sorry, I missed that. What was that?
I extruded it out 1/8 of an inch.
That's the distance?
Yeah, that is the distance, yeah. Now, I'm going to make one more extrusion here to make our top half. And I am realizing I do need to change a dimension, but we'll go back later here. I am going to extrude out again from that same sketch. So I'd like to extrude out just the rectangle part here. And it's difficult for me to see to click on the rectangle part because I've got a body, I've got a 3-dimensional shape in between where my mouse is and the 2-dimensional shape that exists on the other side of it. So there are 2 ways to get around this. I can rotate my view, so my sketch is on the front side. I use the navigation cube up in the top right-hand corner. So I can click and drag on that navigation cube, and I can move around in a little bit finite ways. Anything that highlights blue on that cube, I can click on it, and I can spin around and just look at that sign. The other thing that we could do to solve that problem is just temporarily, I can hide the visibility on that body. So here's the body in my bodies folder that's in the way. So I can't click on the sketch here. If I just turn off the visibility on that sketch or on that body, then I can click on anything that's behind it. So those are the 2 ways to get around that. I'm going to click on my extrude tool. I'm going to spin around to the other side of it as the way that I use to get around that. And I'm going to extrude this the same direction that I extruded the first time. Only I'm just going to extrude it. How wide is my finger? How wide do I want this thing to be at the end of the day? I'm going to extrude it out 1/2 of an inch. Now the default operation here that it is automatically given me in my extrude window is cut. And that is because I'm extruding through a shape that that already exists. I actually don't want to do a cut here. What I really want to do is a join. So I'm going to join those two bodies together. And I'm going to say, okay.
Sorry, I missed your selection, which...
The selection that I made, oh, I got a weird visible.
Is it just the rectangle or the part of the circle?
Just the rectangle. Yeah, I just picked on just
Okay, that was my question.
just the rectangle-y bits there.
So are you gonna end up with like a half moon cut out of the rectangle where the circle isn't being extruded?
Like where this is up
No,
here?
That part of the circle that intersects the rectangle that you're extruding?
Uh-huh.
Is that coming along with it, or?
It is not.
Okay,
Yeah, I did not include that, yeah.
so we're gonna have like a groove through the rectangle where the circle was.
Right now we do.
Okay.
But, you know, I am realizing as I've drawn this that this rectangle should actually be up here. Shouldn't be down here. It should be up here. Otherwise, our joint isn't going to work out so well.
Easy to fix.
But it's easy to fix, yeah. Before we fix that, I would like to keep drawing. So we've kind of got half of our clip drawn. I want to make the other half of my clip, so the top half of my clip, I'm going to make the other side of it by mirroring this body that I've already made. So this body, I can name this. This is body 1, and this I'm going to call top half clip.
Wait a minute.
And you name a body just by clicking on it and then pausing and clicking a second time. And if you can't see the body in your body's folder, there's a little triangle and you can spin down that body's folder and you can see its contents.
I think that broke.
Good job. All right. That was fun.
I got something on the sequence, so I extruded this.
Yeah.
And then I made this extrusion, a half inch instead.
Oh, we actually were extruding the same shape again. So I think you extruded down the lower shape there. So you could right click on that icon there. So actually drag it forward. Bring that thing forward again. And that little blue icon, if you right click on that. There you go. And then you say edit region. And then you can unselect the things that you had selected. So now you're gonna like go back in time.
Yeah.
And you can, you may need to spin around and view the other side of your thing because your body's in the way. That works too. There you go.
This.
And then if something that's important here is when you hide something, if you want to join them together, you gotta unhide it because it won't let you join things to bodies when they're hidden. And then you want to say fill body, you want to say join. Cool. Cool. All right, so now we're gonna mirror this shape. So I'm gonna click on my create menu and I'm gonna choose the mirror option. I'm gonna choose the body, the only body that we have. And as the plane that I mirror this over, I'm going to pick this inside face here. So if I spin this around, you can see how my mirror is mirroring that shape right over the other side. Cool.
Sorry, I'm still stuck at extruding the top half.
Oh, sure. Here, let me come over. Yeah. So you hit enter too fast. So double click on that. Oh, that works too. So now you grab your extrude tool again.
Oh, no, that's fine. Okay.
And you can pick on your shape that you want to extrude there. And don't forget the middle bit there. And then we want to change it from cut. We want it to be joint. And you can say open it. Cool. So now you can grab your mirror tool,
There.
which is in the create menu. Body that you're going to choose is that one right there, and then the face, the mirror plane, is going to be this face that's closest to us. So you can actually use the X key. There's an X button. Well, so it's that face right there, not that face. So it's the edge of the. So there's an X right there, and then you can deselect the thing. Yeah. Cool. Now I'll have you notice that there's an operation in the mirror tool or in the mirror command as well. I hit enter already, but if I were to go back in time and realize that I was too ambitious when I was planning this class, then I can point out that there's an operation here in the mirror command as well. This is actually fairly new within the last couple of years. It always used to join, but you can have it make a new body if you want to. Join is what we actually wanted to do though. And then I'm going to say OK.
Nice doubles. I have like a really higher platform. I realized it just not.
That's about right. That's about right.
Maybe it's just the way you got it wrong.
Yeah, that looks pretty close. That looks like what I got. All right, so now let's make the correction that I need to make here. So I'm realizing that I should have drawn this rectangle much higher. It needs to be up here on the outside of my circle. Otherwise, I don't think our joint will work. Our bodies will be intersecting with each other. So it's nice. Our sketch is fully constrained, so it's going to move around in really predictable ways. If we realize that we did something wrong in the past, again, which I never do, I just did this for illustration. The very first item down here in our timeline of things that we made, that's our little sketch. We can right-click on that sketch, and I can say Edit Sketch. We can also right-click on the sketch in our Sketches folder. That would also do the same thing. So if I right-click the sketch in my Sketches folder and say Edit Sketch, that does exactly the same thing as right-clicking it down here and saying Edit Sketch. And what it does is it takes you back in time. So all the items that happened after that sketch are now kind of grayed out. They're kind of ghosted out because I've gone back in time to a place before I made those, before I did those things. And now I can change something about my sketch, and namely this dimension that I made 3 millimeters.
Over inch to the outside of that circle?
Yeah, we actually want to make it go to the outside of that circle. So I'm going to change it to 1/4 of an inch. Whoops. Whoops. Good whoops. Yeah, so if you change it to 1/4 of an inch, and then the last thing that we want to do here is that this circle is not going to hold on to this very strongly, and they're only connected by that tangent point. So we'll need to connect them by a couple of lines. So I'm going to grab from my Create menu the Line tool. And I'm just going to draw, here, it's kind of a pro tip. So I'd like to draw a line. I'd like that line to be tangent to this circle. And I'd like it to go out, and I'd like it to touch this line right here. And I could just draw a line right there. That would totally be fine.
Don't you make a tangent?
And you can make a tangent after the fact, but I haven't yet. So I could draw a line like this. I could grab this line tool, draw a line out here, and then after the fact, after I've drawn that line, I could come up to my constraints menu, and I could choose the tangent constraint. And I could click on the line and the circle, and it would make those things tangent to each other. The other thing that you can do is you can add that tangent constraint right off the bat by using your favorite tool, a keyboard shortcut. Okay, so if I hold down the Shift key before I've clicked on anything, and now I click on the circle, I'm still holding the Shift key. See, and it's doing it. So as I'm holding the Shift key, it is forcing that line to be tangent to the circle. So as I move around, you can see that tangency is maintaining there. It's kind of trippy, man. And now I can, connect it to that line. Cool. I actually want to do the same thing, but to the other line here, to our other rectangle. So I need a couple of little tangent lines that come off this direction. So again, the first way to do it is if I grab my create menu. Sorry, I didn't see what.
Can you mirror that?
I did not give a dimension.
Okay.
I just made it look like that-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, and Mike, that is a good question. I don't know if we can mirror this. Sometimes when the item you're mirroring exists on both sides of the mirror line, it doesn't like it, but let's give it a try. Oh, look at that. It will 100% just mirror that right over our same line. So yes, you can mirror those objects over, and that is what I am choosing to do here. If we go 15 minutes over, is that cool with everybody?
We do what?
If we go 15 minutes over, is everybody good with that?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So, we got kind of a complicated drawing. Is everybody kind of on following along-ish? It's not like it's complicated because I go back in time and then change things. That makes it nice.
It's arbitrary point out.
Yep, arbitrary, yep. If you wanted to add a dimension to those lines, I would totally let you do that.
Do we set an angle on those lines?
You totally could. Or just give it well, you probably can't set an angle, but you could give it a dimension. You can either give
that
it,
way you know that they're all exactly the same.
yeah, you can either give it an angle or a dimension, not both. Because this line is always going to be tangent to
Right,
our
I
circle
understand
here.
that.
Yeah, so we could, grab our sketch dimension tool, and I could pick this line and say, all right, I want it to be as close to 1/2 of an inch. That sounds like a round number to me, so I'm going to enter in that dimension of 1/2 of an inch. That is probably the best practice here, is to, again, because it's nice when we can have fully constrained sketches. And right now, this sketch is not fully constrained. So I can click on this point and I can move it around, and that's not really conducive to me changing my mind later. You know, versus like this is fully constrained. I can't move this around at all. So you were right, adding a dimension by hitting the D key and then choosing the line that you want to add a dimension to.
What? No.
Oh, it's a D key.
The D key, yes.
Oh, I did the T key when
Ah.
I trimmed something.
Yes, D for dimension, not T for trim. That is, yeah. All right, cool. So we've got our lines here now drawn. Now I can say finish sketch. Because I, changed my sketch in weird ways, when I come into the future and I have my extrusion, weird things have happened. This is not super surprising, but you will have to fix it, right? Do your sketches, does yours look exactly like mine, or weird ways? So my kind of go-to method here is I just drag my history marker back in time to this first extrusion here. So my history marker is this little icon back here. I guess conversely, you could also just like, all right, this first extrusion, let's see what happened here. So I'm going to right click on it in my feature timeline down here, and I'm going to say edit feature. Now this first extrusion, the only thing I was extruding was my circle, or my donut, I guess you could say. So I'm just gonna, it's got way too much selected here. So instead of deselecting a bunch of things, I'm gonna hit the little X on next to my profiles here in my feature editor window here. There's this little X.
So you're editing the feature here? Or
Yeah, I am editing this feature. That first extrusion, I'm editing it so it's extruding out the things that I want it to, and in this case, the things that I want it to are all of that. If I look at it straight on, that's what we want to extrude out. Getting there, stuff makes cool lines, you're mirroring.
I'm still trying to get these straight.
They look good to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Cool. There we go. So you actually want to have a little part of that first extrusion.
Yes.
So there you go. Yep. Right click on that. Let's edit that feature. Yeah, there we go. Cool.
Something to resemble like
Cool. Yeah, that's where we're going to. And I'm gonna say okay there. And actually, it did the second extrusion just fine. It was really that first extrusion that it messed up royally. All right. So, I am ready to make the bottom half of this clip. Are you guys ready to make the bottom half of this clip with me? Still working on it? Yeah, we're going to take first. Yeah, you guys do it. There we go. Correct. Oh, yeah, that's when you went. Yeah. You were good, yeah. And then there we go. Oh, almost. We'll have to zoom in. this
And this
second
is
extrusion
yellow.
right here, if you
What's that
right click
mean?
on that and say edit feature. Now you're extruding that out 1/2 of an inch. It's a join. If you just say, hey, that looks okay, let's go ahead and click OK. So now that yellow went away, but now for some reason that face that you mirrored it over no longer exists. So try editing that feature. Or you're missing a body. So if you just click on the body that you want to mirror, there we go. For some reason it lost the body, didn't remember the name of it or something like
Yeah,
that.
something with.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to make the bottom half of our clip in a very similar way here. So I am going to click on the Create menu, and I'm going to choose to extrude out the bottom half of my clip. So the items that I want to extrude are going to be some overlapping items. So all of this bottom half here, I'm going to choose to extrude that out. I'm going to extrude it out the same distance. So I want this to be the same thickness, right? However, I don't want it to overlap my current body here. So if I were just to extrude this right where it is, 1/8 of an inch, you can see like, oh, these bodies are overlapping each other, and that is not what I want here. I want to start my extrusion from a different place. And there is an option here in the extrude window that we don't really utilize a whole lot. So right now, the start of this extrusion is happening from the profile plane. So it's starting from the place in space that my sketch is. If I choose that drop-down menu, you can see there are some other options here. For example, and the one I think I'm going to go with, I can extrude the start of that plane, the start of that extrusion, I can start from an offset. Because my little pillow block there is 1/8 of an inch, if I extrude this a distance of 0.125, or I'm sorry, an offset of 0.125, so an offset of 0.125 for a distance of 1/8 of an inch. Now we can see that our extrusion is popping right out the other side of that. So because I want these parts to move freely with each other, I actually don't want it to be exactly 1/8 of an inch. I want to give it a little bit of wiggle room there. So you can do one of two things. I can do math right here in my offset window here. So instead of offsetting it by 1/8 of an inch, I can offset it by 1/8 of an inch plus some tolerance. So, or you can just, add that tolerance yourself. The reason why I kind of like doing the math here is because later me doesn't always remember what present me was thinking. Like, why did I extrude that 0.127? Oh, because I'm adding for some other thing. So sometimes I like to I do math here. This is a cue for myself, like, oh, this is a tolerance or something like that. There's two measurements that I'm combining in one. That's why it's a weird number. Cool. So now I got a little bit of gap in there, a little bit of room for Jesus. Actually, that's probably way too much room for Jesus. 2,000s, probably fine.
20,000s?
20,000s. 20,000s, I'm sure will be fine. Machinists in the room can verify. 20,000s is 20 tolerance. perhaps?
I think plenty. You can
Plenty?
go 10.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and then I'm going to say okay. Now I'm going to do the same procedure again that we did for our top. I'm going to extrude out the little square here, the little rectangle. So from the create menu, I'm going to come down to the extrude option. I'm going to grab my little rectangle bit down here. And I'm going to extrude this out, again, 1/2 inch.
Couldn't you just do extrude distant, or extrude change distance to 2 object and select your face?
Yeah, you could definitely, well, so we don't want to go, we only want to go out halfway.
Oh, okay.
Because we're going to mirror this the same way we did the other one.
Got it.
But yeah, so that's another option too here is the distance could be set to an object. So we're just extruding that out 1/2 inch. I'm doing a join here, and I'm pretty sure that we'll only join. Oh no, it will join them all together. So when you do join here, if you end up with like, hey, I only got one body here, we have to be careful when we join these items together. So I want to join this extrusion that I'm making to the bottom little round thing. I don't want to join it to this whole top body. And the way that I avoid joining things together that I don't want to join together is I turn them off in my browser. If I turn the visibility off over here in the bodies folder of my browser, it won't join it to the things that are invisible. It only joins them to the things that are visible in your scene. So, pro tip. We're doing a join. I'm going to say okay. Good so far?
No, a little bit behind.
All right, no worries, no worries. Cool.
Get this part of it.
Cool. Yeah, then you just need to extrude out the bottom part there. So one more extrusion. And we'll leave that guy. And then I'll go a distance of 1/2 inch. And then you want to make sure you join them. But you only want to join it to the bottom section. So to make sure you don't join everything together, because technically these things are touching. So you just need to turn off the visibility on your body one. So there you go, exactly. If you hide it, now when you say join, it'll only join it to the things that are visible from your scene. How you doing?
Pretty good so far.
Cool.
Okay.
You're good, you're good. You just got one more extrusion to make, and then you're right on par. Yeah. Rocking the keyboard shortcuts, I like it. All right, cool. So the last thing that we need to do as far as modeling our clip goes
Sorry,
is
exactly done. How did you get the bottom again?
I extruded out.
I don't remember the offset or profile plane.
Just a regular extrusion.
Okay, that's all.
And then yeah, so you just extrude that out 1/2 inch.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, and then you want to make sure it's joined. It probably defaulted to cut, so there you go. Instead of undoing, you can
Edit.
yeah, you can edit. So you already undid the extrusion,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
so it doesn't exist right now. So there you go. So now you can edit,
Got it.
and then you can just change it from there. We go. Cool. Yeah. All right. Cool. So I am going to click on the create menu, and I'm going to choose the mirror option here. the body that I'm going to mirror is that new body that I just made. For me, it's called body 2. Mirror plane is again going to be that edge. So the edge that kind of was in between the two shapes. This is where it's helpful to turn on your other body, perhaps. So you make sure you're mirroring it in the right direction. And, oh, hey, look at that. How come that's doing that? So we extruded out our top
Mine didn't do that either.
a half of an inch. Why? This extrusion didn't go a half of an inch for some reason. There we go. Now problem solved. All right. I didn't have my first extrusion was not extruded out a half of an inch. It was only extruded out 0.4. All right. So, would you rather make a joint or add a mcMaster Carr component? Just by a show of hands, mcMaster Carr component. Who's excited about that? Anybody?
Sure.
Well, or joint. Anybody excited about making a joint? Making things move in Fusion 360?
Let's make the joint.
Let's make the joint? Let's make the joint.
Then let's undo it and do a mcMaster Carr.
What's that?
Let's make a joint, then undo it and do a mcMaster.
Okay, all right, we'll do both. All right, you win. All right, so in order to make a joint, we first have to have, I'm going to name this body. This body is going to be my bottom half. We first have to have 2 components.
Good job on the consistency.
Thank you. Yeah. Bottom half clip, sure, yeah. Yeah, I tell you, honestly, this is 1,000 times better than body 2. You got to agree with me there. Like, if you're doing a half-assed job at naming your components, you're doing 1,000 times better than you were before.
Not naming them at all.
Not naming them at all, right? So yes, I 100% agree with you. Consistency would be good, but like the fact that you name them at all, I will applaud you. In fact, here, sketch 1 didn't even name that. See, sometimes it's like, what do I even call this? There's only going to be one sketch in this drawing. The sketch. I don't know.
Starting point.
Starting point. It's the clip, dude. That's what it is. All right. All right, back on track. So in order to make a joint, we have to have more than one component. Right now, we only have one component. So
Only have 2, the top half clip and the bottom half
well,
clip?
but they're 2 bodies. They're not
Oh.
2 components. So we've got 2 different bodies. We only got one component here, though. So what I'm going to do is in the create menu here, I'm going to say, hey, I want to create a component.
New component?
Yeah, new component. Yeah, so it's the very top option. It is debatable whether we should have started by just making a new component. Like, you could have started and made a new component and then drawn the top half of your sketch in one component and then gone up and made another component and drawn the bottom half of your sketch in another component. But I happen to know that in this new component option, there is a little checkbox that says from bodies. If I click on this from bodies checkbox, a lot of the options will go away. And now it just says, hey, what are the bodies that you want to make components from? I can either click on them in the drawing view here in my drawing, my window, I don't know, on the screen, or I can click on the bodies in my browser over here. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
There's also a nice little shortcut. If you go to your menu on the left, if you right click on one of your bodies, make new component
Oh, look at
from
that.
body.
Yeah, so you could do it that way too. You could right click on each one of those bodies and say make it a component. I can do them all at the same time though if I do it this way. But thank you, Mike. So I'm going to click on the two bodies that I want to turn into components. So I've got two selected. And then when I say OK, not a whole lot changed, but a whole lot changed. So my bodies folder went away. And instead of my bodies folder, I've got these two items here. I can spin down the little triangle here. Each one of these components has a bodies folder in it. And in that bodies folder is the one body. This is also why I chose to rename my bodies before I made my new components, because it named my bodies named my components based on the body's name already. So I have less renaming to do. I don't have any renaming to do now, but if I would have waited to rename these things until after I made components, I'd have had to rename this, and then I'd have had to rename the body inside of it. I'd have made more work for myself if I wanted to stay organized. And I kind of want to stay organized, but only a little bit. Now we can make a joint. So from the assemble menu here, we want to choose the as built joint option. Shift J for those of you paying attention in the back of the class. There are two options to make a joint. One is a joint and the other is an as-built joint. The difference between these two items is a joint lets you make a joint of things that are not already in the place that they need to be for the joint to work. So if you've got separate pieces and as part of making the joint you want to align them together so they rotate right, the joint option is what you want. Because we drew our items already aligned with each other, we can skip that step of having to align things by just choosing the as-built joint. The joint type that I want to make is a revolute joint. So the default for me was rigid, but I'm going to change this to a revolute joint. And now I'm going to pick the two components that make up my joint. So I'm going to do that by picking on the components in my browser. So I'm going to pick on the top half component, my bottom half component, and now that I've got two components selected, I can select a snapping point. The snapping point here is the point that they're going to rotate around each other. So any one of these circles in here will do just fine. So this circle, or I could pick on, I think if I zoom in, it'll let me pick on the interior face. I could pick this circle down here, and that'll give me the right joint. So any one of those circles will do just fine. It will animate for you one time. If you would like to see it animate again, you can hit the little play button here in the preview motion option there. This is new as of, I believe, January in Fusion 360. So this is exciting. Previously, you could pick a joint, and then after the fact, you could set limits. Now you can set limits for your joint while you're making it, which is a fantastic upgrade. Thank you, Autodesk. So I can set a minimum and maximum for our joint here, because obviously I wouldn't be able to rotate like this in the real world. So I can just guesstimate a minimum of, I don't know, 10. Set a minimum and maximum of 10. Oh wait, here. So actually here I can move it. Look, I actually haven't used this feature since they added it. So it looks like I can grab it and move here. These are my joint limits.
Looks like 28 degrees
28. Yeah, I was going with 25 is close enough for me, but if you want to get a little closer, I will let you do that. And then here, I can even set like specify a default position as the rest. I mean, sure, that looks good to me. Cool. So now, when I click OK, I get this little blue flag. And if I click on it, it gives me a little blue dot. And now I can rotate my joint around here. Now, because some people were excited about mcMaster Carr, I don't want to let you down. The last thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to add in my mcMaster Carr component. So that is the actual spring. In reality, we need a shaft that goes down the middle of this, obviously. But, I'll let you figure out how to extrude that shaft yourself. But in the insert menu, we can choose to insert a mcMaster Carr component. This is a cool thing. If you've been to the mcMaster Carr website, this window will look very familiar to you. This is literally the mcMaster Carr website. You can expand it just like you can the website here. There's a search bar up at the top. And what I want is, it's a spring. And it's a torsion spring is what I want. So if I type in spring, and I was like, all right, now I can look here in my spring types option here, like this is the kind of spring I want. It's a torsion spring. The angle that I want it to be at is probably more like this 120 degree angle. So when it's at its resting point, it's probably going to be at that 120 degree. I suppose this 270 would also be a fine option. Springs are, okay, so let's think about this. If this 270 degree spring pinches inwards, it's going to get tighter on the shaft in the middle. But if we do this 271, as it pinches inwards, it actually loosens on the shaft in the middle. So this is the kind of spring that we want. We actually want this 270 spring. If you've has anybody here ever looked at a spring data sheet? I have never been more confused in my entire life than by you know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. There's a fantastic YouTube series called The Secret Life of Components. It's this British guy who runs this weird museum. You should Google it, Secret Life of Components. He's got an hour-long episode about springs. It's fascinating. Okay, that's my rant. And now I'm going to find a spring that's got an internal, this round part has got to fit around my 5mm rod. 4 shaft diameter. Gosh, now all the stuff is in English here. 0.26 is probably close to 5mm, is that right?
5mm is about 200 thousandths, just under, it's 197.
So it's actually.
You can go with the 210, but it'd be a very tight fit if it compresses down below 210.
It's actually going to get wider as it compresses, but not by a whole lot. I'm going to go with the 0.218. That'll give it some slop. And then if I 0.218, and then the direction I don't think we care about right now. I just want to pick one that's going to be a reasonable price. Now there's probably music wire steel, 6-inch package, max torque. We want a low max torque, don't we? this one or this one look just fine. They look almost the same. One's left-handed and one's right-handed. So once you get down to a product detail, this is the level of granularity we need to get to. We need to get to where you can choose the option for a product detail. Right next to it here it says, hey, SolidWorks 3D. No, we actually want to scroll down and grab a step file. Did I lose people? Did I lose everybody in the McMaster Carr website? No?
I couldn't see exactly.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I picked a. It doesn't really matter a whole lot which you pick, as long as you. Yeah, there you go. And if you click that number, that's probably pretty close to what I got. And then where it says SolidWorks or 3D SolidWorks, if you want to scroll that down to step.
Okay, Carl,
Yeah.
just engineering point right here. With the spring, you compress it. With the one you were looking at, you were actually loosening it. When you put it in there, it's gonna be loosening it. Cause I get what you were talking about was not squeezing the diameter.
Yeah.
What you ought to do is go oversize on this, but go with the 90-degree spring.
Okay.
So that when it goes inside there, you're compressing it slightly.
All right, sure. I'm on board with
But
that.
I'm
on board with that. I mean, really, the way I do things is I order 5 or 10 different springs from mcMaster. And then I figure out that none of them are the spring that I want, and then I order another 5 or
And
10.
that way you have springs for your next spring.
Yeah.
And you don't have to wait.
At any rate, once you get to the point where you're ready to pick that product, I can just hit the download button now, and now it will stick that. It'll stick that component right inside of my drawing, and because this is a spring, it will probably not fit at all.
Sorry, did you hit close or was there a different button that got
I
you?
hit download. So click on one of the actual product numbers.
Oh, okay. All right. Got
Yeah,
it.
so then once you choose a product
$6
number.
for that little spring?
Yeah, it's probably a pack of 6.
Oh, okay.
So still $1 for that spring is kind of, it's not dirt cheap. The spring that I chose has a lot of windings. Probably don't need this many windings. So, more.
Depends on what you're holding with the clip.
Right, yeah. A finger. We're just trying to hold on to a finger.
Yeah,
I think.
we're trying to cut off the blood to the tip of that finger.
Yeah, we're trying to hold it gently and carefully. Now, what I can't do with this spring is flex it in the way that it would need to be flexed to actually look like it belongs here. But I can do a lot with making sure it looks like it fits, and kind of working out placement inside of my shape there, and then I can say okay. So now there's our spring in place inside of our little clip. And were this a real thing, it would be a pain in the butt to assemble this little thing probably, because we got to compress the spring and then put the 2 pieces together, and then with your third hand you got to put the shaft right down the middle of everything. Or we can all bring our springs to class next week, and we'll all help each other inserting our springs.
So we'll just spring it on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So cool. There it is.
All right.
One clip. You can make a chip clip out of this. We could, extend these out a little bit and make a chip clip, or.
It was cool that you could pick a part right from the catalog and drop it in here.
Yeah, 100%.
If you have a PC that collaborates.
Oh, is it being real slow?
Yes, it's like
I have
downloading
a
the
hard time
entire
with that
catalog.
too.
I'll tell you, I pull casters from mcMaster Carr. Sometimes I just pull nuts and bolts because it's nice to be able to know, like, I've often designed something and I go, oh, I can't actually get the bolt in there. Like,
I
there's
don't
no
have
way for me to
clearance
reach
for this
that.
bolt in
Where
it.
is my tool gonna go when I'm tightening down the front of this thing? It's nice to actually have the bolt modeled sometimes. From just a point of view, I believe that any of these components, if I get down to just a component here, when there is this 3D step option here, when I'm putting in threads, I will often choose the 3D step with no threads. Because if you've got 15 or 16 bolts in your file, that's a lot of triangles that your computer is calculating. And if it's got to calculate all the threads on your bolt, things slow down a lot. You don't really need the threads on your bolt. You probably just need the length. So, like when I'm just putting in bolts, it's a lot faster if I do the 3D step with no threads. So, cool. We went a little long. I appreciate you guys sticking around. Any questions?
Thank you, Carl, I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was cool.
All right,
It's
cool.
okay, I'll be here till midnight waiting for my spring to show up.
And so not next week, but potentially the week after that.
It depends on if my ride can be here. I want to be here all of those weeks.
Cool.
So I will keep you updated.
But we might attempt to draw an engine block. That could be a fun, I don't know how far we'll get in this engine block drawing. A single,
We're gonna finish it?
we'll get an engine block drawing start.
That works.
Yes. All right. And until then, I'll see you around the makerspace.
Thank you, boss.
Thanks, Carl.